The moment I saw my signature on a $150 million acquisition contract, one I never signed, I knew my own brother had betrayed me. My name is Ryan Mitchell. I'm 33 years old, co-founder and chief technology officer of a fast-rising cybersecurity company called Ironvale. And until 2 years ago, I believed there wasn't a single person on earth I could trust more than my twin brother, Logan. We shared everything. Our childhood bunk bed, our first car, even our dream of building something bigger than ourselves. But it turns out there was one thing Logan never shared with me: his plan to sell our company behind my back, using a signature I never wrote. Let me take you back. We grew up in Pittsburgh, raised by a single dad who worked the night shift at a steel mill. He had grease-stained hands, a permanent limp from an old injury, and a heart bigger than his paycheck. He'd tuck us in every night, even after a 12-hour shift, whispering, "Boys, don't ever let this world turn you against each other." A strong bond between brothers can outlast anything, even fire. Fire came sooner than we thought. Logan was the charisma guy, the one who could pitch anything to anyone. I was the builder, the kid who took apart the microwave just to see how the timer worked. Together, we were unstoppable. After college, we pooled what little savings we had and launched Ironvale from Dad's garage. I coded, he sold. Our first real break came when my algorithm identified a cyber threat hours before any government alert system could. Within a year, we were protecting small banks and mid-sized tech firms. By year 3, we were on the radar of national defense contractors. Ironvale was worth over $300 million when things started to change. Logan moved to LA, bought a penthouse, started dating actresses and Instagram influencers. I stayed in Pittsburgh, still living 2 blocks from the steel mill Dad used to work at. I didn't mind. I believed Logan was just enjoying the spoils, while I stayed focused on the mission. Until the cracks began showing. We started getting pushback from our CFO about unusual withdrawals from Logan's expense accounts. Investors began asking questions about flashy events that weren't in the budget. Logan brushed it off. "Branding," he said. "We got to look like we belong in the big leagues." Then came a call from our attorney. "Ryan," she said, "I need to ask, have you authorized a sale to Axion Dynamics?" "What?" I said, nearly choking on my coffee. "Authorized what?" "There's a signed letter of intent. Both your names are on it. It says you're selling Ironvale to Axion for $150 million. I froze. My heart went cold. I hadn't signed anything. She sent me the document. And there was my name, my signature, the same way I looped my R, the same tail on the Y. But it wasn't mine. I knew it. I never would have agreed to sell without talking to Logan, let alone to some faceless megacorp like Axion. When I confronted Logan, he played dumb at first. "Bro, I don't know what you're talking about." And he tried to gaslight me. "You must have signed it. Maybe you forgot. We've had a lot going on." Finally, when I pushed harder, he exploded. "You don't understand, Ryan. I was trying to fix this before it exploded. I've got $6 million in debt, man. They were going to come after me personally. I had to do something." I was stunned. The brother who once carried me home from football practice with a sprained ankle had now forged my name on a contract to sell everything we'd built. But Logan forgot one thing, something I hadn't told anyone. Back when we released our core threat detection protocol, I'd quietly embedded a hidden encryption layer, a custom-built 512-bit key only I had access to. It couldn't be extracted, couldn't be copied, and wasn't documented anywhere. Without that key, the system was just noise, and Logan didn't even know it existed. What he thought he was selling was a billion-dollar algorithm. What he was actually selling was an empty husk. After I discovered the forged signature, everything changed. I couldn't look at Logan the same way anymore. Every text, every call, every sentence that came out of his mouth now carried a weight I couldn't shake. It wasn't just betrayal, it was theft. Of trust, of loyalty, of the one bond one thought was unbreakable. But instead of confronting him again right away, I needed to be smart. Emotions wouldn't fix this. Strategy would. I spent that night in the office alone. I didn't go home, didn't eat, just sat there in front of my computer, surrounded by glowing monitors and silence. I kept rereading the contract, the fake signature, and the terms Logan had negotiated. He had handed over every part of Ironvale, our code base, our IP, our brand identity. Every line of code I'd written, every patch I'd stayed up till 4 a.m. debugging, it was all listed in that contract like it was some ordinary inventory sheet. But that wasn't even the worst part. What chilled me to my core was a clause deep in the contract. Logan had agreed to provide Axion with limited code access during the negotiation phase to prove functionality and scalability. In short, he'd promised them a taste. And Logan, in his desperation, had delivered. Our servers logged a high-volume transfer 2 nights before I received the anonymous email. I hadn't noticed it at first because he'd used one of our old developers' sandboxes, environments we kept around for testing, not in production. But he wasn't careful, and he wasn't smart enough to know that those sandboxes still ping my alert system when outbound activity crosses a threshold. He'd exported a compressed build of our code, heavily outdated and partially encrypted, but enough to impress a buyer who didn't know any better. So now I knew 3 things. 1. He'd forged my name. 2. He'd leaked our intellectual property. 3. He still thought he could get away with it. It was time to turn the tables. I crafted a bait version of our threat detection engine, one that appeared robust, even faster and cleaner than the original. But buried inside the code were logging scripts that would silently track every IP, every packet request, and every user who tried to deploy it. It wasn't a virus, it was a fingerprint trap. Then I uploaded it to the same sandbox server Logan had used. The next morning, I walked into the office like nothing had happened. Logan was there, unusually early, wearing that fake smile, the kind he used on investors when he needed something. "Morning, bro," he said, like we hadn't nearly lost everything to his greed. "Morning," I replied calmly. "You're in early." "Yeah, couldn't sleep. Figured I'd get ahead on the McAllen proposal." Line number 1. I played along. Over the next 2 days, I monitored the outbound activity from the sandbox server. Sure enough, the bait code was downloaded by an IP registered in San Jose, Axion's HQ. They were testing it, likely prepping it for integration demos. Perfect. I took all the logs and sent them to our lawyer, Julie Steiner, a battle-hardened corporate litigation specialist who once sued a tech giant for $500 million and won. I didn't sugarcoat anything. I told her the full truth, the forgery, the fake signature, the leaked code, and the decoy I planted. She leaned back in her chair after reviewing everything and whistled. "He's in deep," she said, and Axion's now legally exposed too. They touched stolen IP, whether they knew it or not. "What are my options?" I asked. "You could sue your brother for IP theft and fraud. You could sue Axion for illegal acquisition of protected code. Or," she paused, "you could set the record straight without blowing up your company. But that would require you to outmaneuver both of them." I already knew what I wanted. Julie helped me prepare a cease and desist letter to Axion. In it, we explained that the code they received was illegally transferred, that my signature was forged, and, most importantly, that the source code was a decoy designed to trap unauthorized access. We demanded they cease all use, destroy any copies, and terminate discussions with Logan Mitchell immediately, or face legal action. The letter landed like a bombshell. 3 days later, Axion's general counsel called me directly. They were deeply concerned and completely unaware of the forged authorization. Of course they were. They offered to schedule a formal apology meeting. I declined. That same night, Logan showed up at my house unannounced. He stood outside my door in a hoodie and jeans, eyes tired, jaw clenched. "They dropped me," he said flatly. "Axion said you threatened legal action and that I compromised them. They're threatening to countersue if I don't walk away." I stared at him for a long time. "Did you think I wouldn't find out?" "I didn't know what else to do, Ryan," he snapped. "I was drowning. You were always the genius. You had the power. He stopped himself. I just wanted to matter." There it was. Not just desperation. Not just debt. Insecurity. All those years being the face of the company while I stayed behind the scenes. He thought it wasn't enough. That charm alone couldn't hold up. And when the pressure mounted, he didn't ask for help. He just tried to cash out. "I'm not going to jail, am I?" he asked quietly. I didn't answer. Not yet. The morning after Logan showed up at my door, I sat alone at our old office in Pittsburgh. The same room where we'd signed our first client, celebrated our Series A, and fought over whether the logo should be blue or black. Now it felt like a war room, except the battle wasn't out there. It was in here, between blood and betrayal, between loyalty and legality. I had everything I needed to end Logan's career. The server logs, the contract with a forged signature, the IP transfer confirmed by Axion's access records. Hell, if I wanted, I could forward it all to the district attorney and let the state deal with him. He could be facing felony charges, corporate fraud, identity forgery, unauthorized disclosure of proprietary systems. Real prison time. Julie, our lawyer, didn't mince words. You've got him cornered. There's no gray area, Ryan. He crossed every line. I nodded, but didn't answer. Because the truth was, I didn't want revenge. I wanted to protect Iron Vale. I wanted to protect what we built. But more than anything, I wanted to see whether the person standing across from me was still my brother, or just a ghost wearing his face. I called Logan and asked him to meet me at the office. No lawyers. No posturing. He arrived looking like someone who hadn't slept in days. Eyes bloodshot. Hair messy. He sat down across from me at the long conference table where we once brainstormed product names on sticky notes. I'm not here to fight, he said quietly. Good, I replied. Because there's nothing left to fight for. Silence. I'm giving you two options, I said. But only because once, not long ago, I believed in you. He didn't speak, just stared. Option 1, I continued. I filed charges. You're disqualified from holding corporate positions in most states. You lose everything, reputation, career, freedom. His hands tightened around the armrests. Option 2, you sign over your shares, resign immediately, and issue a public statement accepting full responsibility. You'll walk away with nothing, except your name. No cash, no leverage, no secret deals. But also no handcuffs. And that's it, he asked, voice hoarse. That's it. It's not mercy, Logan. It's containment. He nodded slowly. You're serious. As serious as you were when you forged my name. He looked down at the floor, then leaned back and exhaled deeply. I thought I could fix it before you found out. I thought, maybe if the deal went through, I'd come back, and we'd split the money and call it even. I shook my head. Even? There's no even when you sell someone else's legacy. He stared out the window for a long time. Then, finally, without another word, he reached into his bag, pulled out his laptop, and typed silently for 15 minutes. When he was done, he turned the screen toward me. It was a formal resignation letter. No denials. No excuses. Just ownership. I'll send the shares over to Julie by noon, he said. And then, just before walking out the door, he turned around. I don't expect you to forgive me, he said, but I hope someday you'll remember who I was before all this. Before I let fear swallow me whole. I didn't answer. I just watched him leave. And when the door clicked shut behind him, I sat there in silence. Not angry, not relieved, just hollow. A few days later, the press release went live. Logan Mitchell had officially resigned from Iron Vale, citing personal misconduct and failure to uphold fiduciary responsibility. It made headlines in every major tech outlet. But the story died quickly, especially when I followed up with a public announcement of Iron Vale's restructuring and the launch of our new security platform, Horizon Protocol. What no one knew, except me and Julie, was that Horizon was built on top of our original architecture, except 10 times stronger. I'd spent those sleepless nights rewriting the foundation line by line. New encryption, new firewalls, new everything. It was no longer Logan's product, too. It was mine, all of it. But just as the noise began to fade, something unexpected happened. 3 weeks after Logan vanished, I received a package in my office. No return address. Inside was a USB drive and a handwritten note. Ryan, I found something. Something I never told you about. During my last meeting with Axion, they mentioned a private division targeting independent startups. Iron Vale wasn't the first. They've done this before, using debt leverage, fraud, even blackmail. I'm sorry I didn't say this earlier. I was too busy protecting myself. Maybe this helps you protect someone else. Logan, I plugged in the USB. What I saw on that drive made my blood run cold. Emails, memos, private reports from Axion executives. They had a name for it, the Harvest Protocol. a covert program where Axion would identify promising startups with vulnerable co-founders, usually one with financial problems or addiction, and manipulate them into pushing sales. Quick exits, cheap deals, then gut the companies for their tech. Iron Veil had just been another target. Logan wasn't just desperate, he was baited. I closed the laptop and sat back. For the first time since this nightmare began, I realized Logan may have lit the match, but someone else handed him the gasoline. I stared at the drive in my hand for a long time. This wasn't just about Logan anymore. This was bigger, systemic. Axion hadn't simply taken advantage of my brother's weakness. They designed a strategy for it. The Harvest Protocol, a name so cold, so clinical, it sounded like something straight out of a dystopian novel. Only this wasn't fiction. This was real, and I had proof. Inside that USB was a trove of internal emails, presentation decks, and spreadsheets. Each one laid out a roadmap for corporate exploitation. Companies like mine, co-founders like Logan, identified, studied, and deliberately cornered. A dozen names I didn't recognize. A few I did. Startups I had admired that had suddenly folded, their IPs quietly absorbed into conglomerates like Axion. I had always thought they just burned out. Turns out they were harvested. One of the documents hit me especially hard. A slide labeled Mitchell Profile. It had a headshot of me from LinkedIn. Underneath, a bullet point, technical backbone, morally rigid, could pose resistance. Strategy, isolate. They had profiled me. My chest tightened, not from fear, but fury. They didn't just manipulate Logan. They calculated every step. They knew I wouldn't go along with the sale, so they engineered a way around me. They were betting I'd be too noble or too late to stop it. And they almost won. Almost. But now I had their playbook. I called Julie immediately. "How about something new?" I said. "You're going to want to see this." We met that afternoon at her downtown law office. The moment she read the word Harvest Protocol, her entire demeanor changed. Serious, focused, surgical. "This is predatory acquisition at a corporate level," she said. "If we can verify these documents, Axion is looking at federal charges, possibly RICO violations." My head was spinning. I had come in prepared to defend Iron Veil. Now we were talking about dismantling an entire shadow operation. "You realize," Julie said, tapping her pen against the drive, "if we move forward, you'll be putting yourself in the center of storm. Axion won't go quietly. They'll throw money, lawyers, maybe even PR firms at you. You sure you want that fight?" I didn't even hesitate. They tried to steal what I built, and they nearly destroyed my family doing it. I'm not just going to stop them. I'm going to make sure the world knows who they are. Julie smiled. "Then let's burn the whole damn orchard." We spent the next 6 weeks building the case. Julie brought in a forensic tech team to verify the authenticity of every file. Meanwhile, I began contacting the other companies listed in the documents, carefully, discreetly. Most were hesitant to talk at first, but once they saw what I had, their silence turned into stories. Betrayal, fraud, manipulation. One founder broke down in tears. "I thought I was just a failure," he said. "Turns out I was prey." The story practically wrote itself. Julie coordinated with a group of journalists from The Verge and TechCrunch, and when the expose dropped, it was nuclear. Headline after headline screamed the same thing. Silicon Valley giant exposed in startup sabotage scandal. Axion Dynamics accused of predatory takeovers. Harvest Protocol. How a billion-dollar corporation targeted founders with flaws. The fallout was immediate. Axion stock price plummeted 34% in 2 days. Congressional committees began requesting documents. Class action lawsuits were filed. Their board of directors scrambled to do damage control, but it was too late. The internet doesn't forget, and the tech world doesn't forgive. As for me, I became a reluctant face of something much bigger than I ever expected. I was invited to speak at ethics conferences, startup summits, even business schools. People call me a whistleblower. I didn't like that word. I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just protecting what mattered. Logan called me 2 weeks after the story broke. "I read everything," he said. His voice was different, quieter. I didn't know. Not really. Not how far it went. "I believe you," I replied. A pause. Thank you, he said, for not destroying me. You nearly destroyed yourself, I said. But you gave me that drive. You stopped the damage, even if you started it. Maybe someday, he said, I can make it right. Start by making it real. I told him, whatever you do next, earn it. We didn't speak again for a while, but I wasn't waiting. Iron Veil thrived. Horizon Protocol rolled out to over 100 new clients. We expanded to Europe, then Asia. Not just because we were good, but because we were honest. And in a world full of sharks in suits, that was our sharpest edge. I rebuilt our leadership team with people who shared the same code I lived by. Integrity over ego. Purpose over profit. Truth over tactics. And now, every time I stand in front of a crowd or sit across from a client, I end with the same story. The story of how a forged signature nearly cost me everything, but one small, hidden detail saved it all. Because the truth isn't just protection, it's power. 3 months after the Axion scandal, life at Iron Veil had finally stabilized. We'd survived the storm, and not just survived, we'd grown. Our Horizon Protocol became the new gold standard for proactive cybersecurity. Investors who had hesitated before now lined up. Speaking invitations flooded in, and somewhere along the way, someone nominated me for the Eisenhower Award for Ethical Entrepreneurship. It was a big deal, one of the highest honors in the tech world. Past winners had gone on to become industry icons, startup mentors, even government advisors. Julie called me the night the nomination went public. This is legacy stuff, Ryan. People will remember you not just for what you built, but how you built it. I should have felt proud. But instead, all I felt was conflicted. Because for all the praise and applause, there was one part of the story that hadn't been resolved. One name that still lingered like a whisper in the back of my mind. Logan. I hadn't heard from him in weeks. No messages. No updates. I assumed he was laying low. Who wouldn't, after being part of one of the biggest ethics scandals of the decade? But then, one Friday morning, Maria, my assistant, knocked on my door with a puzzled look. There's a letter for you, she said. Old school. Like, actually in an envelope. I opened it. Dear Ryan, I've applied for a position at Hawthorne Tech, a mid-sized cyber consultancy in Austin. Nothing fancy, just a chance to work again, to rebuild from the bottom. The hiring manager said a reference from you could make all the difference. I'm not asking you to fix anything for me. I'm asking you to be honest. If you think I'm beyond redemption, I'll understand. But if you believe I've changed, if there's even a sliver of the old Logan left, you know what to do. No pressure, no expectations, just truth. Logan. I read the letter twice, then a third time. I sat there staring at it, as old memories played in my head like silent film reels. Logan cheering when we got our first client. Logan dancing like an idiot the night we hit $1 million in revenue. Logan forging my signature. Logan handing me the drive that saved us both. I didn't know what to do. I could easily ignore the letter. Let Hawthorne make their own call. Or I could write something. That afternoon, I drove out to the steel mill where Dad used to work. It had shut down years ago, but the building still stood gray, proud, rusted like an old knight in armor. I sat on the hood of my car and stared at it for a long time, thinking about everything Dad used to say. Strength isn't stubbornness. It's knowing when to stand firm and when to extend your hand. I pulled out my phone and began to write. To whom it may concern. I'm writing to provide a reference for Logan Mitchell. Let me be transparent. Logan and I co-founded a company together. That story includes both unprecedented growth and painful mistakes, some of which made national headlines. But what doesn't get told often enough is what happened after. Logan owned his choices. He accepted consequences. He started from nothing, again. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to prove something to himself. I've watched him rebuild with humility, with accountability, and with a focus I haven't seen since our earliest days. Trust, once broken, takes years to restore. Logan has put in that time. If you hire him, don't do it because I say he deserves a second chance. Do it because he spent every day since earning it. Sincerely, Ryan Mitchell, founder and CEO, Iron Veil Cybersecurity. I hit send. Then I exhaled. A week later, Logan sent me a text. Got the job. Entry level, $68,000. Never been prouder. That was all. No long thank you. No emotional paragraphs. Just 3 sentences. And, somehow, that made it feel more real. The Eisenhower Award ceremony happened in October. Big ballroom, glass trophies, tech leaders in tailored suits, shaking hands like they were sealing billion-dollar deals. When my name was called, I stepped on stage to polite applause and spotlights. But instead of delivering the expected speech about ethics and innovation, I said something else. I built Iron Veil with my brother. We succeeded together. We almost lost it together. And we found our way back, together. I paused, looked out into the crowd. And there, in the very back corner, standing quietly in a rented blazer, was Logan. He didn't wave, didn't smile, but he was there. It had been exactly 8 years since we last stood here. The gravestone was simple, polished granite, no pictures, just the words. Thomas Mitchell, father, worker, builder of men. Integrity is doing the right thing when no one's watching. I remember carving that quote into the draft of his headstone. Julie said it was too long. Logan had argued for something more poetic, but I insisted, because that line wasn't just a saying to Dad. It was how he lived, how he raised us. And, in the end, it was what brought us back from the edge. Logan stood beside me now, hands in his pockets, clean-shaven for once. The quiet wind of a chilly October morning rustled the old oak leaves around us. He placed a folded piece of paper at the foot of the grave. I didn't ask what was written inside. I didn't need to. You know what I keep thinking about? He said finally. What? That summer he let us build that dumb tree house. Even though we had no clue what we were doing. We hammered crooked nails into cheap plywood and nearly broke the ladder 3 times. I laughed softly, and he never once stopped us. Just stood on the porch sipping coffee, watching. Because he wanted us to fail safely, Logan said, so we'd figure out how to build it right the next time. I nodded, and eventually we did. There was a long silence. You ever wonder, Logan said, if he knew all this would happen? That we'd fight, fall apart, and have to rebuild everything. Not just the company, but us. I don't think he knew the details, I said, but I think he raised us expecting it. Not the mistakes, but the recovery, the rebuilding, the remembering. We stayed there for over an hour. No big speeches, no dramatic apologies, just presence. Before we left, I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out something I hadn't touched in years. A worn metal keychain. Rusted. Bent. Dad's old locker key from the steel mill. I kept it all this time, like a reminder of the grit it took to build something lasting with your own 2 hands. I placed it beside the paper Logan had left. You know what this is? I asked. He smiled. His backup plan. I turned to him. What's yours? He didn't answer right away. Then, finally, quietly, he said, showing up. Every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. For the first time in years, I reached out and pulled my brother into a hug. It wasn't warm and casual like it used to be when we were kids, but it was real, earned, and maybe that made it even stronger. Today, Iron Veil is valued at over $900 million. We operate on 3 continents. Our Horizon protocol is used by Fortune 100 companies, hospitals, even federal agencies. But none of that means more to me than the people behind it. The engineers who stay late because they care. The interns we mentor into leaders. The clients who trust us not just with their data, but with their future. Logan now runs a startup incubator in Austin. Nothing flashy. Just a place where struggling founders get second chances. He speaks at events now too, not about success, but about what happens after you fail. He doesn't hide what he did. He owns it. He uses it. And in doing so, he's helped dozens of others avoid the same trap. We still talk every week, sometimes about business, sometimes just about life. And every year on October 12th, we meet at Dad's grave. We bring coffee, 2 chairs, and silence. Because some things don't need to be said. If you take anything from our story, let it be this. Your integrity is your encryption key. Protect it, guard it, memorize it. Because when everything else fails, your reputation, your relationships, even your name, it's the one thing that can still unlock your future. And if you lose it, earn it back, word by word. Stop step by step, day by day, just like we did. Because family doesn't mean never falling apart. It means choosing to rebuild.